Excitebots Trick Racing, released in 2009 by developer Monster Games as a sequel to what many consider one of the Wii's best launch titles, Excite Truck, sought to create a racing experience quite unlike any other, and further build upon mechanics introduced in Excite Truck. Excitebots, much like Excite Truck before it, emphasizes on the stunts as much as it does the racing. You see, instead of your goal being to finish first in a race, your goal is actually to obtain the most stars as possible by the end of a race. Naturally, placing first in a race helps toward this goal of obtaining stars, but it doesn't always necessarily assure victory. Because of the specific win condition of obtaining the most stars as possible, combined with the secondary objective of placing first in a race, it creates a game where the player is not only thinking competitively in how to best their fellow racers, but also thinking more broadly in how they themselves can get the most stars. This way of playing a racing game is actually pretty unique and interesting if you're familiar with how you get stars in Excitebots, which is literally by doing anything. Whether that be by drifting, performing aerial tricks, achieving huge air, jumping through a series of rings, simply collecting them on a track, bashing into other bots, using items found in item boxes, participating in the various minigames on a given track, launching from brightly colored bars that layer the track successfully, and even recovering from a failed launch from said brightly colored bars. The wide variety of activities available favor a playstyle that is extremely adaptive, as sometimes when doing well in a minigame, new shortcuts will open up, furthering your position in a race and leading you to a slew of new stars. This isn't even factoring in the item boxes that vastly terraform the terrain in the middle of a race, a mechanic that was introduced in 2006 by Excite Truck and is kind of a staple mechanic in Monster Games' brand of Excite games. This level terraforming mechanic has a distinct purpose of providing the player situations to adapt to that is not unlike the remotely controlled destructible environments of 2010's Split Second, the enormous in scale catastrophes of 2012's Motorstorm Apocalypse, and albeit a different genre, 2013's Battlefield 4, which presented the Levolutions mechanic, which drastically altered the battlefield after certain conditions had been met. Another thing about this game that I find particularly impressive is its breakneck pace. The boost system here is the same as it was in Excite Truck, and nearly identical to the one found in the Motorstorm series, letting you boost whenever you want, but punishing you by letting you overheat if you get overzealous with its usage. Through boosting, the player can cover a massive amount of ground in a short period of time, and ensures that players never really feel a decrease in speed between all the minigames and aerial tricks. Boosting before an incline can also send the bots flying across the sky at a high speed, allowing them great aerial freedom and a great view of the locales in the game. The high altitude the player achieves from jumps serves as not only a super fun thing for the player to experience, but also as a way for the player to gain a perspective on how large and vast the areas they're zipping past are, making the activity of zipping past them with little delay seem all the more impressive and skill-driven. Colored bars located in every track are a key contribution to the sense of speed this game creates. These colored bars as a mechanic are absolutely brilliant and make the joy of achieving a massive speed boost occur often and through skill-driven play. When a bot comes in contact with a bar, they unload a handle and swing around the pole, decelerating before requiring the player's input at a precise time to launch at blistering speeds. This mechanic really shines in the mandatory red bars the player must utilize in every track, which slow you down considerably and ask you to move the Wii Remote in a rolling motion faster and faster, gradually building momentum until you launch successfully at a high velocity. The juxtaposition of the slow start up to what ends up becoming the fast spin which leads into the launch is exhilarating, and while it may look ridiculous to an observer watching the player actually physically perform the action, it's amazing for giving the player the euphoria of speed they want from a high-speed racer, without necessarily sacrificing control or clarity. In fact, the timing and effort necessary to achieve a boost isn't unlike the boost start found in Nintendo's Kart Racers. Launching from the bars, much like the boost start in Nintendo's Kart Racers, isn't difficult to perform successfully, but the simple player input required still has fairly strict timing and makes it satisfying to do nonetheless. It helps that when you're in contact with these bars, all the player's motions require them to perform a thrust forward of sorts with their controller, making the player's physical actions be in sync with their goal of gaining momentum and speed and creating races where the player feels more involved, all because of rather simple motions they're acting out themselves. And what's even better is that this mechanic of the bars works seamlessly in conjunction with many other mechanics in the game, seeing as that once you launch, you're open to potentially chain to an aerial trick, which could potentially chain to another bar, which chains into another aerial trick. Or perhaps, instead of chaining into an aerial trick, it could chain to one of the numerous minigames on the track. The point is that this unique mechanic is well designed, and in the hands of a skilled player can make for play that is very skill-driven, slick, and most of all stylish. Honestly, it kinda reminds me of a character action game in that respect, but that'll probably lead into a whole nother topic, so I'll save that discussion for another day. Remove from all that though, one way Excitebot seeks to differentiate itself is through the large amount of minigames and activities that are doable during a race. These minigames range from soccer, punting a football, making a sandwich, fishing, throwing darts at a board, collecting butterflies, crashing into bowling pins, throwing pie at a clown, rail grinding, getting a home run, shaking a tambourine in rhythm, and numerous other activities. The minigames here truly drive home the excitement that Excitebots hopes to deliver, and make sure the player is always engaged in adapting to what's happening on screen, testing the player in ways beyond merely getting first. All these gameplay systems working together serve to make Excitebots truly dynamic and ever-changing, making sure a race can change greatly at a moment's notice and constantly keep the player engaged. And I think that's something Monster Games should be commended for, albeit years after they've released Excitebots Trick Racing and have since moved on to different things like Donkey Kong and a Xenoblade port and some NASCAR games. Because in this current climate of good yet pretty samey racing games, it's nice to appreciate one that successfully did something special with wacky animal robot racers.